views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to Bronxtalk. Tonight we stray from the usual politics and issues that we usually tackle on the program. With the emerging spring and today's warm weather, of course, it's the new baseball season, and in the Bronx especially, that is always cause for celebration. And so tonight we have one of the Bronx's foremost baseball experts with us to talk not only about the new season as far as the Yankees and Mets go, but his new book, and that is this book, Down on the Corner, which is with a K for corner because it's a book about the legendary TV show Kiner's Corner, hosted by Ralph Kiner. The phones are open, so talk baseball with us by calling 718-960-7261, or you can send an email to us at bronxtalk@bronxnet.org, or you post it on our Facebook page, and we'll read it on the air during a future edition of our program. For the here and now, he's been a sportscaster, a reporter, is a longtime official scorer at Major League Baseball games. In fact, he's about to score his 1,000th Major League game. He's also becoming a rather prolific baseball author. I've got all his baseball books here. There's other books as well. My longtime Bronx friend, baseball's own Howie Carpenter. Nice to have you.
Yeah, I think I strayed in here tonight, so talk some baseball.
There it is. We're happy to have you, and we will have your co-author is Mark Rosenman, and we'll have him on the phone in a minute. And before we talk about, not the whole library, but about Down on the Corner, let's just talk about the Yankees and Mets. We'll start with our Bronx Yankees. Do they have enough pitching, starting pitching, to make it work and make a run at the postseason?
Not from this chair, they don't. I don't think so. I think they're relying too much on a guy who has an injury that could cost him in Tanaka. The elbow is very fragile. Yesterday he had a decent outing. CC Sabathia is basically your 4 or 5. He can function like that, but in between, your second, third, and fourth, you've got Evaldi, who can be up and down. This rotation, to me, is a little erratic. It's not consistent. You know, they're kind of relying on the bullpen now because they added Chapman, who will join them in May. They'll have the 3-headed monster in the bullpen, but you can't live off that in the regular season. You're going to have to get innings from your starters, and I don't see them getting those innings.
They have a lot of middling guys, Pineda, Nova, and Severino, somewhat, talented, but somewhat unproven. Do you fault them for not doing what the Yankees usually do, and that is sign a big guy? Maybe Greinke was out there. There were guys that they could have signed. Or do you think, you know what, like any team, you have to breathe a little bit, maybe go through a year like this before you can restock? And, of course, the trend now in baseball is young pitching.
They're in a situation where it's a no-win. If they don't sign anybody, then people are saying, why didn't you go out and sign anybody?
Like I just did.
Right, but then when they spend and they sign somebody, they end up with an albatross. That happened recently when Robinson Cano left and they signed Jacoby Ellsbury. They're in a position now where they shouldn't have spent a lot of money, and they did not. That was the smart move. Now you got to rely a little more on your farm system, which they're trying to do, and they are spending money in the international field to bring in international players. So maybe they click on a player there, but right now their farm is a little bit in limbo. They say they have some prospects. Obviously Severino's very raw, but beyond him there's really nobody except for the kid maybe Caprillion, their draft pick from last year, who's on the rise fast through the system. But still, there's not much depth down there, and you can't spend your way out of this. You're going to have to build.
And on some level, on the positive side, they're hoping to get through 5 or 6 innings a game and then put what you say the three-headed monster in there.
Again, a risky proposition. They're like, what are you going to do? Use them every night? 1 inning each? And not only that, there's a situation here where you've kind of devalued Dylan Betances by first you're moving him from potential next closer after Mariano.
Now he's the 7th inning guy.
Now he's the 7th inning guy. When his time's up for a contract, he's going to want to cash in.
You're also rolling the dice on health of older players, of Ellsbury, of Beltran,
Big
and
time,
A-Rod,
big
and
time
Teixeira. That's
big time
4 guys.
roll of the dice, which could come up craps.
You and I, in our private interchanges, have been enthusiastic about the Mets. I know there was a lot of panic because they didn't start off great. But the fact is the offense has not had any rhythm and has not clicked, and it harkens of the way they were at the beginning of last year. Let's talk about the Mets offense.
I think people got a little too crazy. I'm not surprised at this start. I thought they'd stumble a little out of the gate. Their schedule was erratic. They had 2 off days in the first week.
3, actually.
Scheduled off days. Crazy. For the first week of a season, they've gotten into no rhythm at all. Now they're finally starting to get a little of the schedule going every night, get the everyday rhythm, get the rotation going. So I'm not surprised at this start. It wasn't urgent that they started quick this year because they're a very good team. They're kind of established now. They've been to the World Series. The Nationals had to start quick. There was more pressure on them to get out of the gate than the Mets because the Mets are starting to get their act together a little now, and they're going to start to climb up and pad the record a little from here.
Concern about Matt Harvey's slow start? The excuse we heard was that he doesn't pitch well from the stretch, and actually the last start bore that out. As soon as they had a guy on, he didn't pitch well. But after all, he is 0-3 and hasn't looked like Matt Harvey.
No, I think it is a mechanical issue. I've been watching the games. On his release, it kind of looks awkward to me when he's releasing the ball. I think he's getting under the ball, and he's almost like spinning it to where it's staying up. When you're a pitcher, you want to get on top of the ball, almost give it like top spin to go down. I don't think that's happening with Harvey. I think he's getting under it, especially in pitches out of the stretch. I think once they correct that, he'll be all right. But he's also a victim of all this media hype that was created when he had the great year in 2013. I mean, it's Harvey Day,
Happy Harvey Day.
Yeah, exactly. But it was too much. I thought it was a little too much to put him up on a pedestal like that. That may be catching up to them a little bit.
You think they'll have to make some sort of move, maybe bring in a first baseman if Duda stays inconsistent? What's the vision, or is it too early to even look at the trade deadline and what they'd go after?
Well, if you look at the history of the championship teams of recent times, they all make moves at the deadline. You always have to tweak something. You always find a little flaw that you'll need to fill. The good thing is they have chips. They can make a move when they need to. Right now, you see what you got. You play it out a little. You know you got a good team. If they stay healthy, there's no reason they're not going to be in the race for the division. It'd be crazy not to think they would be there unless health is a problem. So you go from there, come to the deadline, make your move, and then see what you got.
All right, let's talk about the new book, Down on the Corner. I want to make sure people can see the cave, a corner. And in order to do that, we're going to bring in the co-author. It is Mark Rosenman. Mark, how are you? And nice to talk to you tonight.
Feeling good, Gary. Thanks for having us.
Great. We're going to start with Howie, and then we're going to go to you. Howie, just lay it out there for people who may be younger than we are, and I grew up watching Kiner's Corner. Why write a book about Kiner's Corner, and what was so special about Kiner's Corner?
Well, 2 things. Mark and I worked on a book called Shoot the Thrill, The History of Hockey Shootout, and we're kind of like a pretty good team. So it was his idea, basically, to write a book about it, although I had a friend of mine who kind of put it in my ear before we even got into the project. We all, like you said, I grew up on the show. You finally saw real ball players. They were human beings, instead of just figures on TV on Ralph's show. So there was a lot there. And plus, as we started it, I didn't think it was that, going to be that great when we started the book, to be honest with you. Mark was the real driving force behind it. And then all of a sudden you got into it and we had all this information, and there it was. It became a book.
And certainly, and I went through it over the past weekend. every single player that you talked to had something to say about Ralph, had some quirky thing to say. I mean, there's a lot of little gems if you read it carefully in there. Mark, for you, talk about the appeal of Kiner's Corner, and then we'll talk about Ralph himself. But talk to me about what was special and what made you say, you know what, we ought to do a book about Kiner's Corner.
I think what was special about Ralph is that in this day, with the people of our age, between, I'd say, 40 and 55, as much as we love the game today, there's something about it with the over-analytics and every single statistic and the sabermetrics where Ralph brings it back to a purer time where after the game he'd have Willie Mays on, and it wasn't about how many miles per hour the pitch was. There were no radar guns. There was no spin velocity. There was no exit velocity. It was just pure baseball. And I think in the age of Twitter and the age of the 24/7 news cycle, that when you went back in time and realized that you watched the game and it was just Kiner's Corner, and there were the simplest video replays, and the players of the day, if you remember, in Tim Harkness in the book, stated how it was like very rare for him to even see his at-bats. He was able to see his home run swing and see what he did right that game. And even for the players, it was a thrill.
You know, you pointed up one of the things that I was going to ask you about. I thought it was fascinating. And again, we are so inundated with replays. And if you miss something, you can, 3 minutes later, it's on your computer, it's on your phone. You can see it everywhere. You go home at night, you can watch the highlights, you can tune into MLB TV, you can see all this stuff. And the players said it was the first time they had ever seen themselves hitting or doing what they do, because there was no instant replay, there was no films in the locker room or anything like that, and they liked being on the show. As you said, Tim Harkness said it, but I think a couple other guys acknowledged it. They liked being on the show. It was the first time they ever saw themselves play. I thought that was an unbelievable thought.
Yeah.
In this day and age. Let's talk about Ralph himself, and we'll start with you, Mark, and then I'll ask Howie a similar sort of question. Ralph was a quirky guy. And now we know the type of sportscasters. Even Howie Carpen's got a nice, good rap. He can talk baseball anytime you want to hear about it. All the announcers, they got their shtick. They can just do it. Ralph was not that kind of a guy, yet he was revered by players and by broadcast colleagues alike. What was the appeal of Ralph Kiner?
The appeal of Ralph was that he never tried to put players down. He never tried to put himself above those players, even though he was a Hall of Famer. Some of the players that came up, 12 to 13 years removed from Ralph was in the Hall of Fame, were even unaware of his legacy in the game. Ralph just had great baseball stories. He could tell the stories. He would occasionally get names wrong, more than occasionally, and that was
Right.
a little bit of his charm as well. I think that the way the Mets broadcast booth was set up also really helped Ralph as well. You had Murphy and Lindsey Nelson, and they were just a terrific team. And I think that helped a lot. And I think the overall joy of Ralph was he was one of the first stars, the baseball stars that became an announcer. It was not like today where every single color analysis, and sometimes two guys in the booth, all were former players. He was pretty much one of the first.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a really good point. Howie, for you, and for me too, the appeal of growing up and watching Kiner's Corner, what was it that made it it was kind of a funky show. We're going to show a clip in a moment, but it was kind of a funky show. He didn't have that smooth delivery, but there was some appeal about it.
Yeah, there was a reverence that, we discussed. I kind of knew it from being around him. I started covering games in the 80s, and you'd see Ralph after the game. Everybody loved Ralph. They couldn't wait to get him a drink, whatever. As soon as he walked in the door, he was treated like a king, but he didn't act like a king. I think that was part of it. Mark was hinting toward that. And also, the reverence, that's the way we tried to write the book, even with the malaprops, that there was reverence for these things. We weren't mocking it. It was kind of like loving, loving his mistakes, his malaprops, making us laugh, because we know he was so sincere and honest, and he wasn't a bad person, and I didn't want that to come off in the book as mocking. So the reverence came out in the book, and I hope that people read that way too.
It certainly does, and there are so many memories of things that I remember him saying or saying wrong, and you pull out some of them that are really hysterical. The one that I personally remember is being there opening day in 1985. The Mets had made this big trade to bring in Gary Carter. There was the big moment, eventual Hall of Fame player, one of the best players in baseball, and there he is introduced in front of 45, 50,000 people, and he goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, Gary Cooper." I remember sitting in the seats and we were going, "You got to be kidding me! He got the guy's name wrong." Somewhat unbelievable. Funniest, what we call malaprop, funniest that you wrote about in the book for you?
Short one. It's academic. Instead of
it's academic?
Instead of it's academic.
All right. Mark, do you have a favorite mistake by Connor?
Well, you actually alluded to it the opening day, and the interesting thing about the book was one of the reasons why this book really took flight and really moved along was I was in the process of getting ready to downsize and pack up all stuff in my 4-bedroom house and move, and I had this wall unit that had to be taken down. And on top of this wall unit, unbeknownst to me, that when we first built this wall unit back in the 80s, were 150 Betamax tapes in the reveal on top. And when I took the wall unit down, 150 Betamax tapes come crashing down all over the floor. And this was a week after Ralph had passed away. And I reached down and I just pick up the first tape. And the first tape is labeled Mets Opening Day 1985.
Oh, there you go. That was the day I was just talking about.
I run into the garage and look for my Betamax deck, and I actually still had it, was able to hook it up, and I'm fast-forwarding and said, "Please be there, please be there, please be there." Get to the 9th inning, fast-forward, and there it is, Kiner's Corner. It's Mookie Wilson and Gary Carter, and Ralph introduces him as Gary Cooper. And he basically tap dances his way out of it because he realized, obviously he didn't realize it was in the earpiece that the producer told him it's Gary Carter. He goes, "Oh, Gary Cooper, what am I thinking of?" And then he goes like this. He goes, "The reason why I said Gary Cooper is because Glenn Close sang the national anthem, and she's in that wonderful movie, The Natural. And The Natural reminds me of Pride of the Yankees, which reminds me of Gary Cooper." That was my favorite kind of.
He talked his way out of it, and that actually is written up in the book. So what I did, gentlemen, I mean, you can go to YouTube and pull up some Kindness Corners, and I really felt that there are Bronxites who may not be as old as us old guys who never saw Kindness Corners. So I just pulled up, we would just show you 2 quick clips. The first one, baseball fans, especially Met fans, will remember that Tom Seaver returned to the team in 1983. So we have that, and then there was a point which actually you wrote about that in this book. And then there was another point where Strawberry and Gooden were on the show. So let's roll the tape and let's take a look. This is what all the action is about. It's a very funky, flunky-looking show. But this was Kindness Corner every day after a Met game.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm Ralph Kiner, and we have as our special guest Tom Seaver. And it was a fitting day for 2 great pitchers, and Tom Seaver, of course, started the ball game for the Mets. And Tom, I think one of the greatest things that I saw was the ovation you got as you came in from the bullpen to start that ball game.
Well, Ralph, that's a question that's been asking me a lot, obviously, since I was traded back here. What my feelings would be when I'd come in, I really didn't know. You know, I mean, you knew it was going to be terrific, and the feeling was going to be terrific, but you don't know personally. I try to be a very disciplined pitcher and control my emotions on the mound and try not to let umpires' calls or errors or bad pitches or things upset me. But walking in from the bullpen and seeing, back where I have so many memories and so many beautiful memories, it took me a couple innings to calm down. It was very touching, and it couldn't have turned out to be a better day. Thank God we ended up winning the game, but it was a very emotional moment.
You know me a little bit about fighting head first because I think it's very important for me to be in the lineup right now at this point of the season. We're down, we're in the pennant stretch, and I've been playing well and swinging the bat well, so I got to kind of back off the slide head first and try to go back to my usual slide in.
Well, there it is. Just very quick clips. You could find it, on YouTube, and we didn't get any permission or anything. I just ripped them off the internet and we threw it
Mark
on the
puts
air.
them up. Mark puts them
Gary,
up.
just so you know, there are about, on our site, Sports Talk NY, there's roughly about, I think right now we have about 15 Kiner's Corners up on that site now. And
so you can
the Mets
really
have been
see
very good. They know what we've been doing, and they said they were very happy with it. So, it's Sports Talk NY is the YouTube page, and they're all there. And it's funny because at Met Fantasy Camp, I actually sat, and Dwight Gooden and I watched the one with him and Strawberry and the one with Dwight alone, and you should have just seen the smile on Dwight's face watching it.
Yeah, and that certainly comes through in the book, is that players love being on the show. I mean, there's no doubt about that. What I liked, especially about that Seaver clip, you really got, you got right into what he was thinking and feeling right after the game, as opposed to the kinds of interviews that you get now where they're standing on the field, I hit the curveball and, that kind of thing. But you really got to, it was intimate, Same thing with Strawberry. He was relatively humble about the fact that, I didn't slide right or whatever he was talking about there. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you wrote about, and we'll let you both weigh in on it. You made a big point about asking each of the players, and folks, there are players, from the range of the all-time greats to lesser-known players like a Barry Lyons or, even Lenny Randle or somebody. You asked them about the set and who it was that brought them on to the set and the mechanics of the show. What was different about that, and why was that so interesting to you? Mark, I'm asking you to start.
What I found interesting is because the show, obviously, it lasted so long. We went from the 60s to the very beginning of the 90s. So obviously the television technology changed over the course of that period. Producers came and went. You went from the Polo Grounds, you went to Shea Stadium. So it was interesting to find out what how vivid their recollections were. So it was important for us to try and have a baseline of what each person remembered and what they remembered about going on the show, and who came and got them, and what their initial reaction to seeing the set was. And it was very interesting. A guy like Ed Charles, who came from Kansas City, said he was familiar with cameras, so it really didn't faze him, whereas Wayne Garrett said, it was kind of startling having the cameras right up in your face. It was a very small studio.
Yeah, a lot of the players said it was the first time they'd ever been on TV.
Yep. Absolutely.
In that way. Whereas nowadays, of course, if you're a major league player, from the minute you walk on in spring training, you got cameras in your face.
Hey, you think about it today. Now with Facebook Live, you have people in the stands, showing batting practice, streaming it live.
How are you around the stadiums now and around the players now? Is it possible to get that intimate with guys? They're so protected and they're so planned out. When you see any of these interviews, other than maybe some incredible moment where they won a big game or a World Series and they just have emotions all over the place, but in most cases it's just very, very laid back, very predictable. These guys were laid back and honest with Ralph.
Yeah, very vanilla almost.
That's right.
I think that was the word you're looking for. I don't think there's a trust factor anymore between the players and the media like there was with Ralph. They trusted Ralph, almost like their uncle.
Like a big teddy bear.
Yeah. Well, because he'd been down that road that they're going down now. He experienced that, so I think that was huge. That gave him instant credibility, but he didn't flaunt that credibility. When you came in there, he was one of the guys, to them. So I think that charm that he had, I don't think that exists anymore. There's a lot of distrust nowadays.
Among the fascinating things in there were two. One which was just absolutely mind-blowing, I thought, the story that Jerry Koosman told. I don't want to give it away that people will buy the book, but Jerry Koosman played an unbelievable joke on his buddy Tom Seaver, and apparently revealed it on the show.
When Mark did that interview with Koosman, and when he sent me to transcribe it for the book, I nearly fell off the chair. It was unbelievable.
It was just unbelievable. I'm torn between wanting to tell the story and wanting to tell people to go get the book, and then you could read about it.
Well, that's one of the highlights. That's the Bunning story, the Jim Bunning story, is one of my favorites.
When the interesting thing about the Koosman story, Gary, is that to hear Jerry Koosman tell the story all these years later, you still hear the joy and the mischief in his voice telling the story, and it still cracks him up to this day, which is just incredible.
Right, and he revealed it on Kiner's Corner.
Yes.
I guess that's the
Yes.
point. The other thing, which I want to ask from a mechanical point of view, did you call people and talk to them, or did you just send them emails and tell them to answer the questions, or how did that work?
No. We spoke to every single person that's in
Everybody.
that book. There was no emails. It was some of it was detective work. Some of it is between Howie and I. We have a very expansive Rolodex. Some of these guys have been guests on my show. A lot of them I've been friends with the last 4 or 5 years down at Met Fantasy Camp. So it was setting up interviews. The one guy that was very difficult to track down, but Howie and I felt it was a must, is it's the urban legend of Choo Choo Coleman. And to get him was part detective work, but we tracked him down and we did speak to Choo Choo. So
Wow.
he's in there as well.
How old could he be now? He must be in his 80s, one would think. Huh?
Yeah, he's up there at age.
His story is one of the more well-known ones from the early days from Kiner's Corner. Mark did a great job with a lot of the players. I called some of the players, and he also called some of the early producers, and we split the calls. So.
You know, one of the things that came through, which I was really shocked about, because you only know what you've seen, and as a fan, Lenny Randle was incredibly articulate. And I was surprised because the only thing you know about him is that he was kind of quirky and he blew the ball across tried to blow
Or he
it
hit
across
Frank
the-
Lucchese.
Yeah, he did all those kinds of things. So now there is an event coming up. Howie, you want to tell us when that is? So folks who want to go and buy the book and talk with the guys about the book and share memories, when is that?
Yeah, Mark and I will be there. It's at Foley's in Manhattan, 18 West 33rd, between 5th. It's right across the street from the Empire State Building. Well-known baseball bar. They have almost like a mini Hall of Fame there. And there's so much memorabilia throughout the place.
So you're going to be there. You'll sign the book.
We'll be selling. We'll be signing, and we invite everybody to come down and have a good time. You're a baseball fan, you'll love it. I mean, it's tremendous.
Mark, we chronicled some of Howie's work, and people can hear him on Sirius and also certainly see him at the ballpark and see his work at the ballpark. Where do we get to hear you or see you and learn about what you do?
You can hear me every Sunday on WLIE 540 AM Sports Talk New York. If you can't listen Sunday, every interview is podcast. It's also on the website, which is sportstalknylive.com. Also on that YouTube page, Sports Talk NY, lots of post-game Ranger interviews and lots of New York Met and opposing teams. In fact, there's a very interesting 9-minute interview with Barry Bonds this past week as well.
All right.
SportsTalkNY.com is
Got it.
at SportsTalkNYLive.com is the best place because you can hear the show.
Mark-
you can see past
Mark
video of the
Rosenman.
show as well.
We got to run. Mark Rosenman and Howie Carpin. The book is down on the corner, available. You can put it on your Kindle. You can get it on Amazon.
Officially
You can get
released
it-
tomorrow.
Officially released tomorrow. Oh, what the timing is unbelievable. Howie, anything has happened at the ballpark that's made you controversial yet this year?
Give it a turn. Give it a chance. Give it time.
All right, well, look for Howie to score Yankee and Met games, and they're all telling me I got to go. I could talk baseball with these guys forever. Thank you. If you have further questions or comments on anything you heard on the show or anything going on in the Bronx, email them to us at bronxtalk@bronxnet.org, or you put them on our Facebook page, and we'll read them on the air during a future edition of the program. You can like Bronx Talk on Facebook. You can check out the archives at bronxnet.org. You can find us on the list on the lower right navigation bar. Next week, sorry, no more baseball. We got to get back to what we do. We'll talk about the latest state budget, politics, and other related issues with two of our Bronx elected officials. That's it. Good night. Thanks to Shirley and to Jayla and to Howie and to Mark. We'll see you next week.